Fear Zone, your channel of horror stories. Good evening everyone, and now we go to the story of today, which is the young Lucas, and this happened to him in the city of Teixeira de Freitas, which is in Brazil, and at that time, that was in the year 2013, the young Lucas was just a teenager. And today I am going to talk about a mysterious case that happened to me. And it all starts like this. At that time, I lived with my parents in a rural neighborhood far from the city, and by my village had few houses on the streets, but also the families that lived near my house, raised chickens and goats, and even oxen and horses, and this was a normal thing in my region. But one night, I was in the backyard of my house, feeding my dogs, and soon I saw a man passing through the woods near my house, but he was carrying a small goat in his arms. This guy didn't see me, but I stayed hidden just watching this man, but this suspect disappeared through the dark woods and disappeared. I didn't pay much attention to this, and stayed with my dogs for a while, but then, after feeding my dogs, I went back home to watch TV. Well, time went by, and when midnight came, I went to my room to sleep, and so, already in my bed, I went to close the window, and it was then that I saw an animal caught in my fence, and soon I noticed that it was a goat, and possibly, it was the same animal that guy is suspicious was carrying in his arms. It didn't take long, and this goat went through the wire fence and into the yard, and it looked like the goat was running away from something. But at that time, a strange animal came running by my fence, and as it was kind of dark in the place, you could see a little bit, and it was a kind of big animal, and it seemed to be a big dog, and this beast kept running back and forth around the fence, and for sure this animal was trying to get inside my place, to get that goat that came through the fence. So I took my slingshot and some marbles, and from my window I saw this strange beast trying to get through the fence wires. Then I put the first marble in my slingshot, and I shot this creature the first time, but I missed, and the animal didn't notice anything, but the second marble that I shot at this beast with my slingshot, hit it right in the head, and at that time, it turned around, pulling its head out of my fence, and soon the creature ran to the bush roaring in pain. I was startled by those noises from this beast, and I was scared too, because I saw the beast's lighted eyes, which were not normal. I kept thinking that this creature was after that goat, and that it entered the house. I kept wondering what had happened, because I saw this goat in the arms of that strange man. The fact is, I was very frightened by this huge animal that appeared, and it could even be some supernatural creature. I kept looking out the window in my backyard, and as the animal that fairy disappeared, I went to sleep a little. But around 4 o'clock in the morning, I heard my dogs barking, but they seemed very scared, and continued barking, so I got out of bed, and went to the living room, and looked out the window, and saw something near the fence, but it seemed to be a man. So, I turned on the light bulb in my yard, and got a big scare, seeing what was this figure, that seemed to be a bizarre creature, with the head of a man, and its ears were big like a dog's, and its face was all furry, and its eyes were lit up, and for sure, it was the same animal that I shot with a slingshot at the fence the other time. But now this creature was standing on only 2 legs, and looking at my property, and to me, it was pretty clear that it was a werewolf, this monster, but luckily, with the lamp I lit my yard, this beast became suspicious, and then this werewolf stood on 4 legs, and ran into the underbrush and disappeared. With this, I was already in shock, to see this creature, and very worried, because this werewolf could try again to enter my land. Well, at this point, I was thinking of waking up my father, but I waited a little longer, and kept looking out the window, to see if the werewolf would appear again. However, when 20 minutes passed, I saw a man walking through the woods, and with his hands on his face, as if something was bothering him, and taking a closer look at the guy, it seemed to be the same guy, who was carrying the goat in his arms, at the very beginning of the night. Anyway, this guy passed by our house and left, and I was worried about this stranger, because of the werewolf that appeared. However, the day dawned, and I told this story to my father, and he knowing this, we went to see the goat that came into our yard, to see whose animal it was. My father told me that the goat belonged to one of his acquaintances, because this animal had a number mark on its skin, and my father told me to give it to the real owner. And what I did, is that I took the goat, then, I went walking, and taking the goat, and entered a path, and I was walking down the dirt road, but in the middle of the road, a man appeared. He said that the goat was his. I looked in this stranger, and realized that it was the same man, who passed by with a goat in his hands last night near home. I refused to give him the goat, and told him I would give it to the real owner, and this guy told me he bought it from a farmer who lived nearby, and I talked to him on the street. We arrived at the place called Sitio do Cabrito, where the man who owned several goats confirmed the story, that he had sold this animal to the stranger. Well, the strange guy got a kid. I noticed that his face was very swollen, and talked a little with this man. He asked me if I had seen some other kind of animal at dawn. I told the truth, and said I saw a werewolf, and my father was already knowing this story. I also said that I would get the gun from my father hidden in the next few nights, and I would stay in Campana, waiting for this werewolf appeared again, and if he came I would shoot to kill the creature. But, I was a bit suspicious with this man, because he seemed to be a very strange guy. I ended up not telling him anything, that I had seen him twice in the early morning near home. After this conversation, the guy ended up leaving. Amazingly enough, never saw this guy around my neighborhood until today. As time went by, the werewolf never appeared near my house. However, as some years went by, and I was getting older, with the years going by, and knowing things better, I started to relate, that the guy who bought the goat, and who passed by my house twice at dawn, he could be the werewolf, yes, because, he appeared around twice, before and after the werewolf appeared, and his swollen face, for sure was the slingshot, that I hit the werewolf, when he tried to enter my yard. And that was my account, that I lived with this werewolf. Thanks for watching the video, and if you like it, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Until the next scary story. Fear Zone, your channel of horror stories. And now, let's go to today's story, which is from Mr. Hernandez, and this happened to him in the city of Gravataí, which is in Brazil, and at that time, which was in the year 1996, Mr. Hernandez was 38 years old. And today, I will tell here, the day that the werewolf appeared on the road, and wanted to get me by any means. And it all starts like this. I live in an ordinary neighborhood in my city, and I live a normal life with my family. Once, I went by car with my wife and my son, to a family party of my uncle, who lived in the rural areas of the city, and there, I met some acquaintances and relatives. I stayed at this party until 2 o'clock in the morning, and after that, I got my car, and went back to my house. While I was driving by a dirt road, I passed a hole in the street, and my car as it was old broke down, and stopped on the road. This made me very nervous, but I had to get down to see the engine. Well, at least in this place, where I was, there was a small farm on this street. However, while I was checking the engine of my vehicle, something strange happened, and I got scared, because there was a horse leaning against the fence of the farm, and this animal neighed, and seemed very nervous about something. I found this animal strange, but I didn't pay much attention to it, and continued to tinker with the engine of my car. Before long, I heard some barking dogs coming from the farm, but I kept on working on the car, and after a while, my little son pressed the horn of the car, and it made a loud noise, and to my surprise, some kind of big strange animal ran out of the road, but I kind of realized that this beast was hiding in the woods, and it was going to attack me, but with the noise of the horn, it ran scared to the forest, and the impression I got, that this beast was afraid of the noise of the horn. At that time, I was very frightened, but the beast disappeared into the darkness of the forest. At that moment, I started to push the car to start it, but while I was doing this, my wife suddenly shouted for me to get in the car. I got scared, and got in the car and closed the door quickly, and then I heard a noise on the car's body of something hitting the door very hard, and after this scare, I was even more afraid, because I saw the creature from the road surrounding my car, and he seemed to be very strange, because his head seemed to be human, but his snout was a dog, and this creature was very large, but what made me more terrified was his bright eyes, that for me, this beast was an evil being. Well, seeing that this beast wanted to attack us, I pressed the horn several times, and with noise the creature ran into the woods frightened, and with the fear that we were already passing, I stayed alert and looking at the forest on the side of the road. However, I didn't see this animal anymore, and of course, that creature could be hiding in the woods, waiting for me to get out of the car. So, not to take any chances, I pressed the horn a few more times, and this beast started to run through the woods, and he seemed to be annoyed by this noise of the car horn. After a while, I didn't see any sign of this creature, even though I pressed the horn. On this road no cars passed, then I heard some barking dogs, and then a man appeared near the farm fence, so I made a sign with my hands and asked that man for help. Then the guy who was near the fence disappeared. I even thought he saw that animal on the road, and got scared and left. Anyway, what happened, is that before long, I saw a car coming down the road. The owner of the vehicle stopped next to my car, and this driver was the same guy that I had seen on the farm fence. He told us to get in his truck fast, and I realized that this guy was armed with a shotgun. Finally, we did this, and me and my family got into the farmer's vehicle. This man said that he woke up with the sounds of my car horn, and came to see what was happening on the street, and when he got close to the fence, the farmer saw this creature hiding behind a tree, but that beast was standing, like a man, only on two legs, and watching my car. At first, he even thought it was a man, but later, he saw that that figure was a bizarre creature, with big ears and hairy, and also its eyes were lit, and for the farmer it was a werewolf. The fact is, that really that strange animal, I had never seen anything like it in my life, and also, by the lighted eyes that it had, it certainly was a werewolf, but I had only seen it, walking on four legs. So, with all this, the old man was worried to see us on the road surrounded by this monster, and so he came with his car to get us out of danger. Anyway, I left my car on the road, and we went together with this driver to his farm, and arriving there, my wife and my son went to sleep in one of the rooms of the house, and I stayed awake with this farmer, and talking to him about the werewolf. However, this bumpkin told me that his horse had been attacked by some ferocious animal at dawn, and on those days his animal seemed to be very frightened by something. But what happened, is that a certain day, a strange guy in the late afternoon passed near his farm, but this injured horse began to get nervous with this guy, and the horse began to follow the suspect through the fence, and it seemed that the animal was very angry with this guy, and if it were not for the wire fence of the farm, the horse would have attacked this strange man. The farmer said that he had not seen anything like this in his whole life, of a horse acting like this against a human being, but the farmer was suspicious of this man, who could be the werewolf that appeared on the road, and tried to attack my car. And that night, the farmer's horse was just as nervous, and looking all around the fence, wanting to warn him of something. The farmer thought it was the strange guy, walking around the place again, and at this time, I made noises with the horn, and this bumpkin saw us on the road, surrounded by the werewolf. I can't really say that it was a werewolf, because I only saw it on 4 legs, but it was a bizarre and dangerous creature. However, in this story of terror that I lived in this early morning, did not take long, and soon the day came, and then, the guy from the farm helped me to fix my car, and then, I went away to my house in the city. And thinking about this whole story, my conclusion is that the werewolf is that attacked and injured the horse, but the animal tried to attack the man suspected of being the werewolf. But in this whole story, the fear I got until today, is that when I pass some place in the woods at night, I already remember this beast. Good guys, thanks for watching the video, and if you like, leave your like and subscribe to the channel Fear Zone. Until the next horror video.